Good morning. My name is Kris Kines. My pronouns are she and her, and I will be your worship leader this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. We are so pleased to have Bill Caine back with us on his antique vibraphone, first with a tune made famous by a little green frog.
My favorite character.
Thank you, Bill. I love that tune. Later, Bill will play another of my favorites, made famous by the great Louis Armstrong. What a Wonderful World. That'll be lovely too. The Soul Matters theme this month is renewal. The opening words on claiming this time for renewal are by the Reverend Gretchen Haley. Though you have been warned and given plenty of explanations, reasons to do otherwise, you have persisted to claim a life of joy and justice and to carve out this time for renewal of your own heart, despite the din demanding your attention, luring you towards fear and cynicism. You persist with gratitude for this day, this life that has been given the chance to begin again, despite all the forces of fragmentation, the disappointing ways we fail each other, fail ourselves. We must refuse to let grief undo us or to let our dreams get lost along the way. In spite of all the evidence, we keep showing up at the edge of our own longing, and then we keep going, remembering this duty we have to life. In a greater sense, this duty we have to each other, our children and their children. This hope that this is also a choice we make, this promise we fight for, to persist in kindness, persevere in compassion, and prevail in a life that is bound entirely to love. Come, let us worship together. As the song leaders come forward, please rise now, if you are willing and able, and turn to the opening hymn, number 360 in the gray hymnal. 360 is Here We Have Gathered. Let's do all 3 verses. Now I'll invite our DLRE, Beth Curtis, to the pulpit for Time for All Ages. I don't have the light on if you want to turn the light
on. Renewal, restoration, replacement, replenishment, reestablishment. All these words have something in common besides the fact that they all begin with R and are very long words. They all denote a meaning, that something has been lost or used up, or it's run out or diminished, and is in the process or has been brought back to its original condition. I'm going to tell a story of a woman who is seen as responsible for restoring, renewing, replacing, replenishing the trees of an entire country. I'm going to tell you a story called Wangari's Trees of Peace. It's a true story of Africa, and it was written by Jeanette Winter. Now we'll start off the book with a quote from Wangari Maathai. "The earth was naked. For me, the mission was to try to cover it with green." Wangari lives under an umbrella of green trees in the shadow of Mount Kenya in Africa. She watches birds in the forest where she and her mother go to gather firewood for cooking. She helps harvest the sweet potatoes, sugarcane, and maize from the rich soil. Wangari shines at school, and when she grows tall like the trees of the forest, she wins a scholarship to study in America. 6 years later, her studies over, Wangari returns to her home in Kenya and sees a change. What has happened, she wonders. Where are the trees? Wangari sees women bent from hauling firewood miles and miles from home. She sees barren land where no crops grow. Where are the birds? Thousands and thousands of trees have been cut down to make room for building, but no one planted new trees to take their place. Will all of Kenya become a desert? She wonders as her tears fall. Wangari thinks about the barren land. I can begin to replace some of the lost trees here in my own backyard, one tree at a time. She starts by planting 9 seedlings. Watching the seedlings take root gives Wangari the idea to plant more, to start a farm for baby trees and nursery. In an open space, she plants row after row of tiny trees. Next, Wangari convinces the village women that planting trees is a good thing. She gives each one a seedling. Our lives will be better when we have trees again. You'll see, we are planting the seeds of hope. Women walk tall, their backs straight. For now, they can gather firewood closer to home. The land is no longer barren. Sweet potatoes, sugar cane, and maize grow in the rich red earth again. The whole world hears of Wangari's trees and her army of women who planted them. And if you were to climb to the very top of Mount Kenya today, you would see the millions of trees growing below you, and the green that Wangari brought back to Africa.
I'd like to have Janice Newman-Clark light our chalice this morning as we hear the words by the Reverend Scott Taylor. Space for breath. We light this chalice to remember that it is good to make space for breath. That work is not the measure of worthiness that fills one's life to the brim, leaves no room for grace and surprise to slip in. Welcome, friends. Let us make space to be renewed. Thank you, Janice. Good morning again, and welcome to Buckman Bridge Unitarian Universalist Church. That's a long name, so we abbreviate BBUUC. This sacred time we spend in community every week is like the elixir that renews my spirit, and it's a joy to see you here today. We all need other people to invite, amplify, and help us discern our inner teacher's voice. For most of us, the journey towards inner truth is too challenging to be made alone. The path can be too deeply hidden to be traveled without company. Finding our way often involves clues that are subtle and sometimes misleading, requiring the kind of discernment that can only happen in dialogue. Our objective or purpose can be perplexing. We need community to find the courage to venture into the alien lands which the inner teacher may call us. If you are here for the first time, we're so glad you found us. We hope you stay and enjoy refreshments after the service. If you are interested in Unitarian Universalism, We offer Learn About You classes. The welcome table at the entrance is a good place to start, and getting a name tag helps us get to know you. Please feel free to speak with any member about BBUC. If they cannot answer your questions, they can point you to someone who can, whether it's your first time in worship with us or your 100th. We hope that you will find here questions that stretch you, people to befriend you, and liberal religious values that challenge you to join us in loving boldly, living justly, and welcoming radically. May we root ourselves in the values of this faith, a faith based in covenant rather than creed. Our congregation's covenant can be found printed inside of the order of service. Let's recite it together. We covenant to engage one another with honesty, kindness, and respect, to value diversity, seek understanding of our differences, and practice gracious accountability with care, love, and empathy. We make these promises to those who are here and those yet to come, so that we may be a safe, welcoming, and beloved community of acceptance, learning, and transformation. Please rise for the singing of the call to worship. The words are also printed in the order of service.
Through every land, by every
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. This reading is a prayer for the stressed and wearied by the Reverend Tess Bomberger. For all among us who are fearful, angry, irritable, resentful, stressed, anxious, worried, or weary, we pray. O precious one, as we breathe in deeply together, may your kind air fill the hard places within. As we breathe out slowly, may those places soften, widen. As we inhale gently once more, may peaceful oxygen untangle the tangled places, loosening any knots we might find in our muscles, stomachs, and hearts, so that when we release our breath, we let go of all the stress and tension. If tears come, let them come. This is a place where we can fall apart and know that others will hold us gently as we put ourselves together once more. As we mingle our breaths in this safe, our sacred place, may our fears disperse. May anything within us that may beckon conflict now take flight. May our frayed nerves knit together once more. May we realize that worry wastes our creative energy. May we instead put that power to better, more positive uses. O source that flows through all things, open the closed places within us now. Remove all impediments to love and calm, that you may flow serenely through us. May we dance in the current of your grace to the music and the rhythm of our hearts. Amen. The offering that we take each Sunday isn't just a stale habit. It's an opportunity to recommit to this place and to this people. Our offering is an affirmation, a yes. When we give, we say yes to something we value. With our gifts freely given, may we say yes to the values of our faith. May our offering help us to practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our congregation. As tools to empower our mission, as stated in the front of the order of service, BBUUC exists to create and nourish a loving community that seeks justice for all. Today's offertory ushers are Chuck Smithers and Marilyn Jones, and the offering will be followed by hymn number 123, Spirit of Life. The poem that was going to be presented as a video will actually be delivered by David Dean as a preface to the sermon, Renewal Limit. David, the pulpit is yours.
I'd like to dedicate this morning's sermon to Carol Hawkins. It's a great pleasure and an honor for me to share another sermon written by Reverend Rod Richards of Unitarian Universalists, San Luis Obispo, California. Now, we've previously heard his thoughts on seldom heard discouraging words, as quoted in Home on the Range, and the difficulties UUs face when it comes to making the circle wider. Today's sermon, which not coincidentally folds into our Soul Matters theme of the month, the gift of renewal, begins with a poem that he will reference later in the sermon. So I'd like to offer the entire work now so you can hear it in context later. It's written by Stanley Kunitz, who in the year 2000 became the 10th Poet Laureate of the United States at the age of 95. This poem is called The Layers. I have walked through many lives, some of them my own, and I am not who I was, though some principle of being abides, from which I struggle not to stray. When I look behind, as I am compelled to look before I can gather strength to proceed on my journey, I see the milestones dwindling toward the horizon and the slow fires trailing from the abandoned campsites over which scavenger angels wheel on heavy wings. Oh, I have made myself a tribe out of my true affections, and my tribe is scattered. How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? In a rising wind, the manic dust of my friends, those who fell along the way, bitterly stings my face. Yet I turn, exulting somewhat with my will intact to go wherever I need to go, and every stone on the road precious to me. In my darkest night, when the moon was covered and I roamed through wreckage, a nimbus-clouded voice directed me. Live in the layers, not on the litter. Though I lack the art to decipher it, no doubt the next chapter in my book of transformations is already written. I am not done with my changes. Reverend Rod Richards begins, I am a faithful and enthusiastic supporter of the public library. I routinely have multiple books checked out, as well as another handful or two on hold. Hanji, Reverend Richards' partner and a respected author in her own right, Hanji and I check for updates on our hold lists and share the information in anticipation of the next library visit by one or both of us. I have 2 on hold. I have 3 on hold, and 1 that was shipped today, so it might be in depending on when we go. I've maxed out my hold list, so we'll have to wait till to pick those up. Yeah, we're bad. We're that bad. But as habits go, we found it to be relatively harmless and a lot of fun. Sometimes, however, just as a particularly hungry person may order too much food at a restaurant with unrealistic expectations of consumption capacity, Sometimes I find I have not been able to read as many books as I had anticipated within the allotted 21-day checkout time. Thank goodness for the online renewals, right? If no one else has the book on hold, I am able to renew it up to 5 times. And yet, even with this generous service provided, there are those times that, with all the good intentions in the world and with complete confidence that I will definitely get around to reading this fascinating volume during the next upcoming renewal period, I've reached the point when I click the renew button once again and I receive the dire message, renewal limit reached. Now, at the library level, it's pretty easy to face up to this circumstance. Time to return the book. Try another, or try this same book at another time when I actually may find the time and attention to read its contents. It's a manageable problem, if it can even be called a problem. But I have to say, when I first read this month's theme, renewal, that's the first phrase that popped into my head, renewal limit reached. What do I do when it feels like the possibilities for renewal have been exhausted? When, having rebounded from disappointment and even despair time and again, I reach that point where it feels like there are no more opportunities for hope left. When it feels like the message from God or the universe or the world or my community or my personal life, when it feels like the message I am receiving when I seek out one more chance to revive my vision of what could be, what should be, what can be, when the message I seem to receiving is renewal limit reached. Just think of the time during the heart of the pandemic, the manic, sometimes heartbreaking roller coaster ride that was. There was the initial recognition of this serious and for hundreds of thousands of people fatal health emergency and the pain it was leaving in its wake. And then there was the hope amid the worry and the pain that this struggle would truly bring people together in compassion and concern for the common good. And then there was the realization that concern for the common good was not common enough. Or there was not a definition of the common good that was held in common. Or that concern for the common good was considered too radical to consider, even in those uncommon times. And then there was the hope that experiencing this major disruption to address a threat to health and well-being, the hope that we could now imagine actually attempting the kind of disruption that will be necessary to address a threat to the entire planet, climate change. And then came the realization that the moneyed interests that have been thwarting those attempts all along were still very much in control, raking in profits as the pandemic raged and raking in more as they encouraged the rush toward getting back to normal, because the old normal worked pretty well for them. Healthcare workers, teachers, essential workers, they were applauded joyously for a time, and then they were forgotten at best as wave after wave after wave of this virus crushed hopes for an expeditious end to the pandemic, and frustration turned to denial, turned to anger at the very people holding it all, holding us all together as best they can. Wave after wave. Waves of suffering, followed by waves of hope, followed by waves of disappointment, followed by waves of renewal, followed by... I have experienced that which I may describe as renewal at different points during this time. But sometimes it feels like those renewal periods are shortening, such that I need to return to the well of hope each day, to renew, sometimes multiple times a day, to renew. And there are times when I reach that point when it feels like there are no more opportunities for hope left. When it feels like the message from God or the universe or the world or my community or my personal life, when it feels like the message I am receiving when I seek out one more chance to revive my vision of what could be, what should be, what can be, when the message I seem to be receiving is renewal limit reached. And then I wonder, what then? Reverend Richards writes, we held a celebration of life for Reverend Tom Norwood yesterday. Many of you in the congregation knew Tom. He was a longtime member here, served as minister, became minister emeritus of this congregation, was a warm and insightful and powerful presence within the congregation and in the wider community. His life touched so many. He was loved by so many. And I wondered, as I listened to the voices in that service, as I listened to his wife, Nancy, and his sons, Jeff and Tom, as I took in the many faces in the Zoom squares who had gathered to remember this man, this life, this presence, I wondered about the possibility and the power of renewal to be found in grief. I wondered if we, as a culture, are so busy running toward the next goal that we have lost the ability and the possibility for renewal to be found in collective communal grieving. Stanley Kunitz writes in The Layers, "How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? In a rising wind, the manic dust of my friends, those who fell along the way, bitterly stings my face." We call services like the one we held for Tom Norwood a celebration of life. I always acknowledge that we come together to mourn a loss and to celebrate a life. The two go hand in hand. And in fact, mourning the life, mourning the loss of another person is an acknowledgement of the fact that I cared for them, that that person mattered in my life. Mourning is also celebrating the life of that person and expressing gratitude for the connection to my life. And celebrating that life is an acknowledgement that I will miss their presence in my life, that I mourn the loss. Now, I want to add something at this moment. Last week, I saw a really amazing movie about death and about mourning. It's called Tuesday. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is in it. Tremendous performance, very different role for her. And I don't want to spoil the fantastical aspect of this movie. It's major, and it's right there in the beginning of the movie. But near the end, there's a conversation about whether there is a God, or at least an afterlife. And I couldn't find the exact quote, but it's basically, as long as you carry the memories of the departed, you are their afterlife. Again, the movie's called Tuesday. It's still playing at the AMC at the mall, and you should definitely see it. And as long as I'm on this tangent, just yesterday I saw another movie about grief and life and community and renewal. It's called Ghostlight. I cannot recommend this movie more highly. It is just beautiful. Bring Kleenex. It's great. Anyway, I digress. Reverend Richards continues. Celebrating a life is an acknowledgement that I will miss their presence in my life, that I mourn the loss. And what I am saying is that touching that part of ourselves, speaking from that place, grieving, gathering for that purpose with others, is a recognition of that deep connection that survives all circumstances and weathers all storms and persists through all challenges. There is deep sorrow and also joy. We have somehow come closer to realizing the precious nature of this fragile, fleeting existence, terrible and tender all at once. Yet I turn, exulting somewhat, with my will intact to go wherever I need to go, and every stone on the road precious to me. You see, it's been said, I have no doubt that I have said, that suffering and sorrow bring us together. I'm not so sure it's true. Suffering and sorrow can just as easily drive us apart. It seems to me that what brings us together is the willingness to grieve and the willingness to join together in grieving. Stanley Kunitz writes, "In my darkest night, when the moon was covered and I roamed through the wreckage, a nimbus-clouded voice directed me, 'Live in the layers, not on the litter.'" Live in the layers, not on the litter. I don't pretend to know what Mr. Kunitz means by this, but it struck me that suffering and sorrow may be the litter of the wreckage. To give voice to my grief, to share and listen to others, allows me to discover the layers. Live in the layers, not on the litter. May we do that. May we live in the layers, not on the litter. May we find that inexhaustible source of renewal within ourselves, that place within that connects us to others and all that there is, that source which never returns the message, renewal limit reached, so that we too may say, along with the poet, though I lack the art to decipher it, no doubt the next chapter in my book of transformations is already written. I am not done with my changes. Stanley Kunitz and Reverend Rod Richards.
As the song leaders make their way back to the chancel, will you rise once again in body or spirit for the closing hymn, followed by the extinguishing of the chalice and the benediction. Our closing hymn is number 108 in the gray hymnal, "My Life Flows On in Endless Song."
I hear a peal, but far off
Janice, will you return to the chalice, to extinguish the chalice, please? We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts that they are, renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown, renewed in soul and mind. As we extinguish this flame of our chalice, may its lingering spark be carried in your heart until we are together again. I bid you peace. Amen, namaste, and blessed be.